Boy genius reveals what 3IATLAS did to make NASA activate its planetary defense. The gymnasium of Westlake Elementary buzzed with the excited chatter of parents and students navigating between trifold boards and hastily constructed volcanoes at the annual science fair. In the far corner, away from the papier-mâché solar systems and bean plant experiments, 10-year-old Ethan Parker stood silently beside a laptop, displaying complex orbital calculations and a series of star charts that would have looked more appropriate at a university astronomy department than a fifth-grade science fair. Ms. Holloway, the science teacher, approached with her clipboard, already anticipating another blue ribbon for Ethan. His projects always outshone the others, not because his parents helped too much, like some she could name, but because Ethan's mind worked differently. His IQ had been measured at 185 when he was 6, and the school had long since given up trying to find appropriately challenging material for him. "So, Ethan, tell me about your project this year," she said, genuinely curious. Last year he'd built a functioning spectrometer from household items. Ethan looked up, his serious blue eyes magnified behind thick glasses. Unlike most children his age, he didn't bounce with excitement or rush his words. He spoke deliberately, as if perpetually aware that others needed time to catch up with his thoughts. "I've been tracking anomalies in the orbital patterns of near-Earth objects," he said, turning his laptop to show a complex scatter plot. "Using publicly available data from the NASA Center for Near-Earth Object Studies, I wrote an algorithm to analyze pattern deviations in asteroids classified as potentially hazardous." "Mrs. Holloway nodded, understanding perhaps one word in 3. "And what did you find?" "Inconsistencies," Ethan replied, clicking through to another screen. "Specifically, orbital adjustments that don't conform to standard gravitational models. Look here." He pointed to a red line threading through a field of blue trajectories. "This is the path of asteroid 2022 KY14, as reported in NASA's public database. But when I apply Newtonian physics, the trajectory should follow this path." He traced a finger along a dotted yellow line that diverged subtly from the red one. "That could be measurement error, right?" Ms. Holloway suggested, trying to engage meaningfully. Ethan shook his head. "I accounted for standard error margins. These discrepancies are consistent and increasing over time. And it's not just one asteroid." He clicked to another screen showing multiple similar divergences. "There are 7 near-Earth objects showing the same pattern of anomalous course corrections." A woman who had been hovering nearby stepped closer, her NASA lanyard partially obscured by her blazer. "Excuse me," she said, extending her hand to Ms. Holloway. "I'm Dr. Samantha Wells. I couldn't help overhearing. I work at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory." She turned to Ethan with an intensity that suggested she wasn't just making polite science fair conversation. "Would you mind showing me those calculations again?" For the next 20 minutes, Dr. Wells questioned Ethan with increasing interest while Ms. Holloway moved on to judge the baking soda volcanoes. Ethan's parents, David and Karen Parker, watched from a distance, accustomed to their son drawing attention from academics, but noting the unusual seriousness of this particular interaction. "And you developed this algorithm yourself, Dr. Tritoniti, Wells asked, examining the code on Ethan's laptop. "Yes. It's based on a modified Kalman filter with parameters adjusted for solar radiation pressure and gravitational perturbations from Jupiter," Ethan explained, as if discussing lunch plans rather than graduate-level astrophysics. "This is impressive work," Dr. Wells said carefully. But I'm curious." She paused, choosing her words. "Where did you come across the designation 3IATLAS. I noticed it in your dataset labels. Ethan's expression remained neutral. It was in the metadata of the NASA files, a recurring tag in the corner of the raw telescope images, always associated with these specific anomalous objects. I assumed it was a classification system. Dr. Wells's face paled slightly. And you found this in publicly available data? Ethan nodded, pulling up a folder of images. Right here. See? He pointed to a tiny alphanumeric string in the lower corner of an image showing a faint pointe star-like point against the black of space. Dr. Wells took out her phone and stepped away, speaking in hushed tones. When she returned, she handed Ethan her business card. I'd love to discuss your findings further. Perhaps you and your parents could visit JPL sometime soon. We have an outreach program for gifted students. That evening, as Ethan meticulously dismantled his science fair display, his father approached, Dr. Wells's card in hand. So, NASA's interested in your asteroid project. Ethan carefully closed his laptop. They should be. Something's affecting the trajectories of multiple near-Earth objects. Dad. Something that's not in the physics textbooks. David Parker studied his son, recognizing the particular set of his jaw that indicated absolute certainty. You're sure about this? I've checked my calculations 63 times, Ethan replied. Those asteroids are changing course in ways they shouldn't be able to. And NASA knows it. They've tagged the data with a special classification. David sighed, long accustomed to having a child whose intellect outpaced not just his peers, but most adults. Well, maybe Dr. Wells can explain it when we visit. Mom already called her to set something up for next weekend. But they didn't have to wait that long. At 7:42 the following morning, a black SUV pulled into the Parkers' driveway in their quiet suburban neighborhood. Two men in suits approached the door, accompanied by Dr. Wells, who looked considerably more formal than she had at the science fair. Mr. and Mrs. Parker, she greeted them at the door. I apologize for the early visit, but after reviewing Ethan's work more carefully last night, my colleagues and I felt this couldn't wait. May we come in? In the living room, while Ethan was called downstairs, the men introduced themselves as Alan Rhodes and James Carter from the Office of Planetary Protection, a division Karen and David had never heard of. Dr. Wells sat forward, her expression grave. What I'm about to tell you is classified, she began. But given what Ethan has already discovered independently, we've received clearance to bring you into the loop. She nodded to one of the men, who opened a laptop displaying images similar to those in Ethan's presentation. Tate, 6 months ago, our tracking systems identified an unusual object we initially classified as a near-Earth asteroid. Its trajectory was concerning. As we continued to monitor it, we observed what appeared to be controlled course adjustments, changes that cannot be explained by natural phenomena. Ethan entered the room, unsurprised by the visitors, as if he'd been expecting this development. He glanced at the laptop screen and nodded. 3IATLAS, he said simply. Doctor. Wells looked sharply at him. Yes, that's the designation we gave it. An internal code name. What concerns us, Ethan, is not just that you identified the anomalous behavior, but that you found reference to 3IATLAS in public data. That information was never supposed to be accessible. Ethan shrugged. Your redaction protocols missed the metadata embedded in the raw telescope images. One of the suited men, Carter, cleared his throat. The question is, what else have you discovered, and have you shared this information with anyone? Karen Parker's protective instincts flared. My son is 10 years old. Are you interrogating him? Doctor, Wells raised a placating hand. Not at all. But we need to understand the extent of the breach. And more importantly, we're genuinely interested in Ethan's algorithm. He's identified patterns our own systems didn't flag. Because you were looking for natural phenomena, Ethan said quietly. Your models are built on that assumption. Mine weren't. Dr. Wells exchanged glances with her colleagues. What assumption were you working from, Ethan? Ethan's gaze was direct, unchildlike in its intensity. That something intelligent is adjusting the course of those asteroids. The pattern is too precise to be random or natural. And it's not just affecting 3IATLAS. That's just the largest object. There are 6 others showing the same signature of external influence. A heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, Rhodes spoke. We need to take this conversation to a more secure location. Dr. Chen will want to speak with Ethan directly. Dr. Marcus Chen? Ethan asked, his usual composure cracking slightly to reveal genuine excitement. The Planetary Defense Coordinator? You know of him? Dr. Wells asked. I've read all 37 of his published papers on asteroid deflection strategies, Ethan replied. His work on kinetic impactors is groundbreaking. David and Karen shared a look, the familiar mixture of pride and bewilderment that came with parenting a child whose bedtime reading included astrophysics journals. If we're going somewhere, Karen said firmly, we're going as a family. Of course, Dr. Wells assured her. We'd like all of you to come. There's a secure facility about 2 hours from here where we can continue this discussion with the proper resources. She looked at Ethan with newfound respect. And Ethan, please bring your laptop and any notes you have. Your perspective on this situation may be invaluable. The facility turned out to be an unmarked complex nestled in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. After passing through multiple security checkpoints, the Parkers were escorted into a conference room where a wall of screens displayed asteroid tracking data similar to what Ethan had compiled, but vastly more detailed. A tall man with salt and pepper hair and deep worry lines stood as they entered. Ethan Parker, he said, extending his hand with the gravity one might use to greet a fellow scientist rather than a child. I'm Dr. Marcus Chen. Your algorithm has caused quite a stir in our department. Ethan shook the offered hand, his expression serious but his eyes alight with the thrill of meeting his academic idol. Your paper on gravity tractor applications for planetary defense had some calculation errors in the 3rd appendix, he said by way of greeting. Doctor. Sine mein fine feats. Chen's eyebrows shot up before he laughed, genuinely amused. Did it now? We'll have to discuss that later. He gestured for everyone to sit. But first, I need to understand exactly what you've discovered. And then I need to explain why it's crucial this information doesn't leave this room. For the next hour, Ethan walked through his methodology, explaining how his algorithm detected minute discrepancies in the orbital trajectories of 7 near-Earth objects. His parents watched in a mixture of pride and bewilderment as their son conversed with a room full of PhDs as if he were one of them. The key insight, Ethan explained, pointing to a particularly complex equation on his laptop screen, was to isolate perturbation patterns that couldn't be attributed to standard gravitational influences from planets or other large bodies. Dr. Chen nodded, then looked to Dr. Wells. He's independently verified what took our team 3 months to confirm. He turned back to Ethan. What's remarkable isn't just that you detected these anomalies, but that you immediately suspected non-natural causes. Ethan adjusted his glasses. The changes follow Fibonacci sequences at regular intervals. Nature uses Fibonacci patterns, but not with that kind of precise timing. A heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, David Parker cleared his throat. Would someone please explain in plain English what exactly is happening here? Dr. Chen pressed a button, and the wall screens shifted to display a rotating 3D model of what appeared to be a large, irregularly shaped asteroid. This is 3IATLAS. We discovered it 6 months ago on a trajectory that would bring it within the Earth-Moon system. Initially, it was classified as a potentially hazardous asteroid, but routine, nothing we haven't dealt with before. He clicked again, and a series of trajectory plots appeared. Then it changed course, subtly at first, so subtly that our automated systems didn't flag it. But the deviation increased, and when we analyzed the changes, they couldn't be natural, Ethan finished. Exactly, Dr. Chen confirmed. Something is controlling this asteroid's path, and not just this one. As Ethan discovered, 6 smaller objects are exhibiting the same behavior. Karen Parker's face had gone pale. Are you saying aliens? Dr. Chen's expression remained carefully neutral. We're saying we don't know. But whatever the explanation, 3IATLAS now appears to be on a potential collision course with Earth, with an estimated impact date of October 17th. 6 months from now, Ethan said quietly. Yes, which is why 2 weeks ago, NASA formally activated the Planetary Defense Coordination Protocol. Multiple space agencies worldwide are now working on response strategies. David ran a hand through his hair, struggling to process the implications. And you're telling us this because? Dr. Wells leaned forward. Because your son's algorithm detected something our systems missed. The smaller objects, Ethan, can you show them what you found? Ethan pulled up a different set of data visualizations. The 6 smaller objects didn't just change course along with 3IATLAS. They detached from it. Look. He played an animation showing tiny points separating from the larger body at regular intervals, each following a slightly different trajectory. The scientists in the room exchanged glances. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. This is new information for us. Our tracking hadn't definitively established that these objects originated from 3IATLAS itself. They're probes, Ethan said matter-of-factly. The room went silent again. Dr. Chen studied Ethan carefully. What makes you say that? Their deployment pattern. It's systematic, designed to create a distributed sensor network around Earth. If I were mapping an unfamiliar planetary system, that's exactly how I'd arrange my instruments. One of the other scientists, a younger man with a JPL badge, laughed nervously. We're getting planetary defense advice from a 5th grader. Dr. Chen's expression remained serious. A 5th grader who spotted patterns our entire department missed. I think we'd do well to listen. He turned back to Ethan. We'd like you to work with us, Ethan. Your perspective could be valuable. Karen immediately shook her head. Absolutely not. He's 10 years old. This is clearly a matter for professionals and government agencies. Mom, Ethan said with uncharacteristic urgency, they need my algorithm. It's calibrated differently than theirs, and I want to help. Mrs. Parker, Dr. Chen said gently, I understand your concerns, but I assure you, we're not suggesting Ethan shoulder any responsibility here. We would simply value his input in a consulting capacity. He would work directly with Dr. Wells, with you present at all times. David and Karen exchanged looks, having one of those silent parental conversations that Ethan could never quite decode despite his genius. We need to discuss this privately, David finally said. Of course, Dr. Chen agreed. But I should emphasize that time is a factor. If these objects are indeed some form of probes, as Ethan suggests, understanding their purpose could be critical to formulating our response. While his parents stepped out with Dr. Wells to discuss the proposition, Ethan remained in the conference room, studying the data displays with Dr. Chen. "You really think they're probes?" Dr. Chen asked, his tone carefully neutral. Ethan nodded, pointing to the screen. "The movement patterns are too precise. And look at this." He pulled up another visualization on his laptop. "When I map their trajectories collectively, they create a perfect hexagonal pattern with Earth at the center. That's not random." Dr. Chen studied the pattern, his scientific skepticism warring with the evidence before him. "If you're right, we're dealing with something far beyond our experience. The public response could be problematic." "That's why you classified it," Ethan observed. "Partly, though your discovery of the 3IATLAS designation in public data suggests our security protocols need reviewing." He gave Ethan a sidelong glance. "How did you get past NASA's firewalls to access the raw telescope data anyway?" Ethan looked mildly offended. "I didn't hack anything. The images were in the public archives, just buried in subfolder structures most people wouldn't navigate through." Dr. Chen made a note on his tablet. "Remind me to hire better data security specialists." When Ethan's parents returned, their faces showed they'd reached a decision, though not without considerable debate. Karen still looked troubled, but David had his practical solution expression, the one he wore when he'd found a middle ground. "Ethan can consult," David said, "but only after school hours, only with direct supervision, and this arrangement will be reassessed weekly." Dr. Chen nodded, agreed, and I promise you, his safety is our absolute priority. The next 3 weeks fell into a surreal routine. Ethan attended school during the day, where he struggled to focus on fractions and state capitals while his mind was occupied with asteroid trajectories and possible extraterrestrial probes. Each afternoon, he was picked up by Dr. Wells and driven to a local secure facility where he could work with the NASA team remotely. His algorithm was integrated into NASA's tracking systems, allowing for more sensitive detection of the subtle course changes that continued to occur with both 3IATLAS and the smaller objects. What emerged was increasingly impossible to dismiss as natural phenomena. "The pattern is accelerating," Ethan noted one afternoon, studying the latest data. "The course adjustments are happening more frequently." Dr. Wells nodded, concern evident in her expression. "The objects have also begun emitting intermittent energy signatures that our deep space network is detecting. Nothing we can decode yet, but definitely artificial." Ethan's mind raced with the implications. Have we tried responding, sending signals back? NASA has transmitted standard greeting protocols toward 3IATLAS, similar to what we've sent into deep space before. No response yet. That evening, as Dr. Wells drove Ethan home, he stared out the window at the darkening sky, imagining the distant asteroid moving inexorably toward Earth, carrying with it questions humanity had pondered for centuries. "Dr. Wells," he said suddenly, "I think we're approaching this wrong." "What do you mean?" "We're treating this like a threat. What if it's not an attack? What if it's a test?" Dr. Wells glanced at Ethan, momentarily taking her eyes off the road. "A test? What kind of test?" "Think about it," Ethan said, his mind racing ahead as it always did. "If an advanced civilization wanted to destroy Earth, why announce their presence months in advance with obvious trajectory changes? Why send smaller objects in a pattern we could detect? They're observing our response." The next morning, Ethan's theory was presented to the full planetary defense team. The conference room was now crowded with additional experts, including representatives from the SETI Institute and military officials who eyed the 10-year-old in their midst with barely concealed skepticism. Dr. Chen stood at the front of the room, gesturing to Ethan's latest data analysis on the main screen. Ethan Parker has identified what may be a significant insight into the 3IATLAS situation. I've asked him to present his findings directly. Stepping forward, Ethan felt a momentary flutter of nerves, not from the audience of experts, but from the weight of what he was about to propose. He'd stayed up most of the night refining his theory, mapping the pattern of signals from the smaller objects against various mathematical sequences. "The objects we've been tracking aren't weapons," he began, his voice steady despite his age. "They're a distributed communication network. The course changes aren't random or threatening. They follow a mathematical progression that builds in complexity, like a sequence of increasingly difficult questions." He clicked to the next slide, showing a series of waveform patterns. These are the energy signatures from the 6 smaller objects, arranged chronologically. Each one builds on the pattern of the previous one, with a clear pause between emissions, as if waiting for a response. A balding man in a military uniform frowned. "You're suggesting these are what alien SATs testing our intelligence?" Ethan nodded, unperturbed by the skepticism. "Essentially, yes. Consider first contact from their perspective. You wouldn't want to share advanced technology with a civilization that might misuse it. You'd want to establish their level of scientific understanding first." Dr. Saito, a quantum physicist who had joined the team the previous week, leaned forward with interest. "Vincent, the pattern recognition is compelling. But if this is a test, we've been failing it. We haven't provided any responses they could interpret as answers." "Exactly," Ethan said. "We've been sending generic greeting messages, the equivalent of saying hello when someone's asking you to solve an equation. We need to respond to the actual patterns they're sending, demonstrating that we understand the mathematical principles involved." For the next 2 weeks, Ethan worked alongside Dr. Saito and a team of cryptographers to develop a response protocol. They identified the mathematical sequences embedded in the signals from the probes, complex patterns relating to prime numbers, quantum states, and cosmic background radiation measurements, and crafted responses that demonstrated comprehension, while adding the next logical elements in each sequence. The first breakthrough came 3 days after they transmitted their responses. One of the smaller objects changed course again, but this time in a pattern that mirrored the mathematical structure they had sent. "They're responding to us," Dr. Chen confirmed, the excitement in the control room palpable as the tracking data came in. "The probe is acknowledging our solution." Ethan, who had been allowed to stay past his usual departure time given the circumstances, couldn't suppress a grin. "Now we need to respond to their acknowledgement with the next level of complexity." Over the following month, this exchange continued, each round involving more sophisticated mathematical and physical concepts. The communication progressed from abstract mathematics to information about atomic structure, quantum principles, and, eventually, data that appeared to reference the cosmic history of their respective star systems. Throughout this process, 3IATLAS itself remained on its concerning trajectory toward Earth, though its arrival time had been recalculated multiple times as it made additional course adjustments. "It's still coming," General Harrington reminded everyone during a high-level briefing. While these mathematical games are fascinating, we need to maintain focus on defense preparations." Dr. Chen nodded gravely. "The intercept mission is on schedule, but I believe continuing this communication protocol is our best chance of resolving this peacefully." Ethan, who had been permitted to attend the briefing given his central role in the communication effort, raised his hand. "I think we're missing something important about 3IATLAS itself." All eyes turned to him. Over the past month, the initial skepticism about including a child in these proceedings had largely evaporated. Ethan had proven himself not just a mathematical prodigy, but someone whose unique perspective had been invaluable. "The smaller probes are communication devices," Ethan explained, "but 3IATLAS is something different. Based on its size and composition readings, it contains significant amounts of rare elements not commonly found in asteroids. I think it's not a weapon, but a vessel, possibly carrying something they intend to share with us if we pass their tests." Dr. Wells frowned. "That's speculative, Ethan. We can't base our defense planning on that assumption." "I'm not suggesting we stand down the defense measures," Ethan clarified, "but I think we need to be careful about how we approach the intercept mission. If we appear hostile at this stage, after establishing communication, we might fail the final test." After heated debate, a compromise was reached. The planetary defense mission would proceed, but instead of deploying kinetic impactors designed to destroy or deflect 3IATLAS, they would position observation satellites near its projected path, ready to act if needed, but not overtly aggressive. The gamble paid off. 3 weeks before its closest approach to Earth, 3IATLAS began to slow its velocity. The smaller probes, which had been maintaining their hexagonal formation around Earth, adjusted their positions in synchrony. "It's establishing a stable orbit," Dr. Wells confirmed, studying the latest tracking data. "At this rate, it will position itself at the L1 Lagrange point between Earth and the Sun." 2 days later, 3IATLAS transmitted its first direct communication, a complex data packet that took the combined efforts of quantum computers and Ethan's pattern recognition skills to begin decoding. "It's a library," Ethan announced, his eyes wide as the first visualizations appeared on the screens. "Scientific knowledge, cultural information, an introduction to whoever sent these probes." The data confirmed Ethan's theory. 3IATLAS was an automated emissary from a civilization 17 light-years from Earth. The probes had been tests, not just of humanity's scientific understanding, but of how they would respond to an unknown entity. Would they react with immediate aggression or attempt communication? The measured approach, largely guided by Ethan's insights, had demonstrated humanity's readiness for first contact. As the world leaders were briefed and preparations made for a carefully managed public announcement, Ethan found himself in Dr. Chen's office, staring out the window at the night sky where 3IATLAS now orbited, invisible to the naked eye, but forever changing humanity's place in the cosmos. "You know they'll want to talk to you," Dr. Chen said quietly. "When this goes public, you'll be the boy who helped establish first contact with an alien civilization." Ethan considered this with his usual thoughtfulness. "I just saw the patterns others missed. Anyone could have done it if they'd looked at the data the right way." Dr. Chen smiled. "See, that humility might be why the algorithm in your head works differently than everyone else's. Most adults approach unknown phenomena with preconceived notions. You saw possibilities." The public announcement came 3 days later, a carefully choreographed press conference where world leaders explained the situation with as much transparency as possible while emphasizing that the contact appeared peaceful and potentially beneficial. The existence of 3IATLAS, now reclassified as emissary, was confirmed, along with the information that it had established stable orbit and begun sharing scientific and cultural information. Ethan's role was acknowledged, but downplayed to protect his privacy. Though that didn't prevent his school from erupting into chaos, when students realized their classmate had helped save the world from potential catastrophe and establish humanity's first extraterrestrial contact. 6 months later, as the first technological insights from the emissary data were being cautiously implemented in research laboratories worldwide, Ethan received a special visitor at his home. Dr. Chen arrived carrying what looked like a small telescope. "Chaon hur tanfoidid." "The astronomy community wanted you to have this," he explained, handing the device to Ethan. "It's calibrated to observe the emissary in orbit, a token of appreciation from very grateful scientists around the world." As dusk fell, Ethan set up the telescope in his backyard, focusing it on the coordinates provided. There, glinting in the sunlight against the darkening sky, was the object once known as 3IATLAS, the emissary that had changed everything. "What do you think you'll do when you grow up?" Dr. Chen asked, watching as Ethan made minute adjustments to the telescope's position. Ethan looked up from the eyepiece, his expression thoughtful. "I used to think I wanted to study distant stars and galaxies," he said. "But now I know there are others out there actually watching us, too." He smiled, a rare, genuine smile that reminded everyone he was, despite everything, still a child filled with wonder. "I think I want to help figure out what we should say next."